To help the guests feel better, we encourage them to do things like name their least favorite states to work with, or maybe some developers they particularly don't like. So if you'd like to...
Hold on a second. Let me get my least favorite developer file.
Get your box of Rotten Tomatoes out, and you can start launching them at people.
Yeah. Here's all the landowners who have yelled at me, either in person or on the
phone. The New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast, featuring your hosts, Gabe Reinick and Ken Holyoke. Featuring Gabe Reinick and Ken Holyoke. The New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast.
Welcome back to the New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast. I'm Gabe Reinick, and I'm in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and I'm joined, as I am, just about every fortnight by Ken Holyoke in Lethbridge, Alberta. How are you, Ken?
Very best, Gabe. We haven't actually, episodes have been coming out fortnightly, but I don't think you and I have recorded anything since like mid-December.
No, I don't think we have it. In fact, I was listening to the ESAF app that we did.
Oh, yeah.
Was realizing that our intro did not make a lot of sense.
Oh, really?
You were describing tumbleweeds.
Oh, yeah.
They would be frosty tumbleweeds.
Yeah. Well, so...
also the name of Ken's country band.
Yeah. And so the listener will, on today's episode, actually, through the magic of production, and we recorded this, I believe, in early November.
We did, Ken, because I believe the listener is going to hear Kelley Berliner and I talking about how beautiful Frederick, Maryland, in November.
Yeah. Yeah. So so we're flashing back to the fall, to the balmy November weather. But we're in winter presently as we're recording this.
We are. And two different forms of winter, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah. Although there's snow in Fredericton now.
There is, yes.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of snow in Lethbridge?
We get a little skiff of snow, but it was when last week was like plus 18, I think, on Wednesday.
All right, that sounds nice.
Yeah. Well,
how windy?
I was going to say that comes with a tree uprooting amount of wind kind of thing. So yeah. The tumbleweeds actually were so the tumbleweed crew was out cleaning them up on I believe it was Monday, and then the wind came, like the Chinook came through on Monday.
Should we tell the listener that we're having the tumbleweed crew? Actually, they're our opener when we when we play
for the CAAs. Yes, yeah, we're gonna get them to back up and everybody gets a take home tumbleweed. You can just attach it to your belt and go from there
and roll away.
Exactly.
Have there been any children injured by tumbleweeds recently?
Well, they had the fencing up, so and the fencing was doing its job, and the fencing had been cleaned up, but then it was immediately filled back in. Mm-hmm, in fact, we saw. So, for those of you that know the principle of uniformitarianism, which is a geological law that says that all the geological processes that we see going on right now have been happening for all through the past, right?
Oh, I thought it was a religion in which all the pastors drove Priuses.
Do I have that right? It's uniformitarianism?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. Just we're still under the same geological laws that we used to be.
Yeah. So I actually got to teach my children about Aeolian sand.
Wow.
Yeah, because they're building a new subdivision to the west of us, and because of the intensity of the wind, we actually had like sand erosion and like silt erosion basically being pulled off of the field to the west of us. And there was like, how you get snow drifts in the winter? Well, there was a sand and silt drift actually that accumulated probably like 5 to 10 centimeters of sand and silt accumulated on the road during the last windstorm.
That's fairly impressive.
Yeah.
So the tumbleweed crew does not have a plow to deal with that, I'm assuming.
I'm not sure what they did. I'm guessing they would have had to come, shovel it out of there. Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive.
Self-driving
But we're not
cars,
here to
but
talk
you still
about...
can't clear the road in life.
Yeah. We're not here to talk about tumbleweed and the wind, Gabe. We're here to talk about science.
We are.
So what do we have in store today?
Well, what we have in store today is we're going to be talking to Kelley Berliner, and I think actually Kelley Berliner, really she deserves a more effusive introduction than we could possibly give her because she works for this very cool organization. It was a very great interview, I thought. And in addition to that, though, as we alluded to, we have left New Brunswick for this interview.
That's right. We've mostly gone south of the border.
Yes, we've gone south of the border. And Ken, what is this podcast still called?
It is called the New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast.
Mm-hmm. How many words is that?
That is all one word. Well, I mean, it's 3 words, actually. If you conclude it's 4 words. But actually, no, it's the new... It's 5
Ken
words.
hasn't slept a lot, listening.
But in our email address, it's all one word, newbrunswickarchaeology@gmail.com.
Indeed. And so as we're going south of the border, do you worry sometimes, Ken, that even though, as I mentioned, this interview with Kelley Berliner is really incredible, that there might be like listeners in Frederick, Maryland who aren't going to find it because we're still called the New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast?
They might have just been detained by some of the paramilitary forces that are running rampant across the United States right now.
And across, I mean, by the time this drops, might also be across Greenland.
Who knows?
Who knows? But on that happy note, Ken, even if you were in Greenland, you might not know to listen to this because they're pretty soon. I mean, they could be under the Archaeological Conservancy soon.
That's true. Yep. That's they've got they're spreading their wings and they cover lots of ground.
Yeah. So, listener, if you have a few favorite archaeological sites in Greenland that you think the Archaeological Conservancy should start considering, you should email that. But you should also email us a potential new name for this podcast because we would like to have a little bit more listenership, Ken. Isn't that right?
That's right. We'd love growth. We'll talk a little bit about it in the mailbag today. But we had some exciting stats, I guess, over the holidays with our new YouTube shorts.
Oh, how exciting. And so, Ken, if the listener had a new name for this podcast, would we just annex it?
No, we would not, and we wouldn't show maps of their name in the Oval Office.
Oh, Cody, could you please cut that from my background?
And but no, we would offer appropriate remuneration.
And Ken, this week, I think that remuneration is going to be very important for the professional archaeologists in our life. And so, Ken, it's no secret that archaeology is in a curation crisis. For instance, even in 2007, Michael Boea wrote in Science, the curatorial problem has been brewing for decades. In 2000, a report on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers collections, millions of artifacts occupying nearly 50,000 cubic feet or 8 million kilometers of space that could fill a dozen tractor trailers, concluded that in about 75% of cases, artifacts had been stored in improper conditions and were quietly disintegrating. About 10% needed immediate attention. Famously, Ontario has just thrown up its hands, and archaeologists may store more than 300,000 boxes of archaeological material in their own garages, basements, and self-storage units.
Yep.
And it's not just artifacts, Ken. The CBC has reported that King's Landing offloaded $50,000 or so Canadian of books, some of which ended up in the Value Village just up the street from where I sit right now.
Are they part of your library now?
They would have been if I'd gotten there fast enough, Ken. But there's no way around it, Ken. Archaeologists are going to have to make some tough decisions, and those decisions should involve hard and heartfelt conversations with descendant communities, rights holders, stakeholders, and researchers themselves. They should involve courageous action on the part of government. It should involve a massive expansion of archaeological repositories and staff, and it should involve revisiting difficult topics like archaeological prioritization and CRM proponent obligations to collect collections that result from development projects.
This sounds much nobler than most of our prize reads.
Sit tight, Ken. But Ken, do you think that's likely to happen?
You know what, Gabe? It hasn't happened yet. I'll just put it that way.
So as Ken said, since that seems unlikely to happen, our prize read today will provide the lucky repository or CRM archaeologist in Ontario or a librarian or whoever an approach to this that is efficient and effective at supporting right-sizing or deaccessioning. Ken,
yes.
Are you familiar with Shintoism?
Not one of my various religious familiarities.
How about the teachings of Maria Kondo?
Yes, actually, you know what? I fold my t-shirts in the way that she tells you to.
Oh yeah, like sideways.
You know, it's a trifold, so that you can always see the edge. Yeah, so they can go stacked in the sideways drawer. Yeah,
precisely. And so, Ken, you've begun to know the teachings of Maria Kondo, and you've known what joy it's brought to your life. And that's right, Ken. The lucky listener is going to get to meet the author of the life-changing magic of tidying up and the breakout Netflix reality show Tidying Up with Marie Kondo. Inspired by the teachings of Shinto, the KonMari method is a proven approach to organizing even the biggest disasters and is perfect for the archaeologist in your life. So the fundamental approach here, Ken, as you know, is that one gathers everything together and then works through a series of activities based around the premise of keeping only things that tokimeku, or spark joy. Anything that doesn't, boom, deaccessioned. And not only will the curator be freeing up shelf space, they'll be learning about themselves along the way, as they consider why or why not each regular-sized banker's box of material did or did not spark joy. Gravel samples from the Tower Road, boom, into the bin. And not only that, Ken, once Marie is helped with the Tokimoko assessment, she's going to help the lucky listener find the perfect place in their warehouse, storage unit, basement, office, closet, whatever, to make sure that box stays in perpetuity. Because, Ken, as Marie teaches, quote, visible mess helps distract us from the true source of the disorder, end quote. So, Ken, I'm going to ask you and the listener to close their eyes and vision with me as I share this wisdom from the KonMari method. All right, Ken is closing his eyes here.
Closing my eyes.
All right. Many people carry negative self-image for years, but it is swept away the instant they experience their own perfectly clean space. This drastic change in self-perception, the belief that you can do anything if you set your mind to it, transforms behavior and lifestyles. Once you've experienced the power of perfectly ordered space, you too will never return to clutter. So, Ken, is this a good approach to collections management? No, absolutely not. Is it as good as any of the other ideas presently on offer? Yes, and probably even better. So, Ken, where would the lucky listener looking to get their archival and spiritual house in order send the new name for this podcast?
They would send that to newbrunswickarchaeology@gmail.com. That is New Brunswick Archaeology, all one word. Archaeology spelled ARCHAEOLOGY, newbrunswickarchaeology@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram @new_Brunswick_archaeology. Archaeology spelled the same way. And find us on LinkedIn by just searching for New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast.
That's right. And Ken, if you reach into that perfectly ordered mailbag, what do you find?
Well, since Google changed their Gmail layout, I don't know, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, much the same as the recent Apple update, they've decided to just give the middle finger to anybody in terms of their user experience and just go with whatever they need. It's like, so I believe
they've uncondoed your read, yeah.
Well, I think they took the philosophy of kind of like grouping things together as like that'll make it easier, right? Except that Google made it possible so that you could not find the email that you were looking for because it's been stacked into a series of other emails that date back to like 3 years ago because you had the same conversation with somebody. And Outlook did the same thing. And anyway,
Ken,
this mailbox.
My Gmail doesn't do that. I'm not sure what's set that way in yours.
Oh, well, maybe there's some classic, maybe you bought into Gemini, the new AI version of it. Okay, so going back through the mailbox, let's see here. Oh, so you'll remember last time we went through the mailbox, we had an email from the ECMAs, so the East Coast Music Awards. There is another one.
No kidding.
Lynn has emailed again to save the date for the press conference for the East Coast Music Awards. So,
are we emceeing it?
Well, it's at 11 a.m. Wednesday, January 28th at the Sacred Heart Church in Sydney, Nova Scotia. So, Gabe, are you heading to that? This email is addressed to you.
It's going to depend on what the rest of the email says, Ken.
No, this is just to save the date. But there is another one here. Oh, an invitation to the ECMA 2026 press conference. So, Gabe, are you doing anything Wednesday, January 28th? Because I think we just got our press credentials.
I'm checking my calendar here, Ken. So January 28th. I'm checking
at 11 a.m. Atlantic.
I do have a prior engagement, I'm afraid.
Oh, that's unfortunate. So, the East Coast Music Awards Association is inviting members of the media to attend a press conference marking the official launch of the ECMA 2026 season. So, Gabe, we have managed to somehow insert ourselves into the media landscape of the Maritimes and are now being invited out. So,
does this happen every year? Because I will clear my calendar for it next year.
I'm not going to lie. I don't know where. I'm guessing the ECMAs are being held in Sydney this year. I don't think the award show is that. Okay, so the ECMAs are taking place May 20th to 24th in Sydney, Cape Breton.
Are we getting complimentary tickets?
Well, I don't know. Media planning note. An RSVP is appreciated for in-person attendance. Please reply to this email if you expect to attend. A live stream link will be shared in advance.
So can we ask questions?
I don't know. I hope we get a lanyard.
That'd be great. Or like one of those press badges we could tuck in our hats.
We should get vests that say press on them.
We should.
So we've got a...
we really do need a new name for this podcast. This is
So we've got a whole new media department, I guess, that we become traditional media, actually, I think, now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been a medium in about 2 years, so...
So that is two sets of emails. We also have a message from somebody actually on LinkedIn. This is somebody. So this is from JM, who is from the Lost World of Cape Breton Island podcast. Thought I'd drop you guys a line, seeing as there's so few maritime podcasters focusing on history and archaeology. Excited to have encountered your project and looking forward to future episodes. Oh, well, thank you, JM.
That's very nice, JM.
Yeah. We'll have to check out the Lost World of Cape Breton Island podcast.
We should. And we should maybe consider doing a joint podcast.
We should. And maybe JM will also be in the media scrum at the ECMA event in January.
I hope so. So Jay, we appreciate that, and we will endeavor to respond to you. But if we don't, you should email our work email addresses, which we actually check.
Yes, and because we have a very bad habit of not checking these emails.
Yes.
So if you're listening, JM, shoot us an email to our ULETH and UNB emails, which are readily available. Okay, so we've had lots of traffic actually on social media over the last little while. And so while there are no other emails, I would like to highlight that we have had several posts on LinkedIn get in the high hundreds of impressions and likes, things like that. So one post about I believe this is our holiday episode, got 864 impressions actually over the last month or so.
Good luck getting a seat at the
impressive.
Cardinal Room for the next few months.
I know, eh? And then we also have YouTube Shorts, which we have launched. I don't know if we have talked about those yet, have we?
It's far too cold for YouTube Shorts. I'm wearing a full YouTube sweatshirt.
But we've had some of them, and for anybody who has seen those pop up on social media, that's really great. Give it like thumbs up or likes, whatever platform you're on. I think that kind of becomes a bit of a self-perpetuating thing.
And am I right that we sometimes actually are dropping teasers about upcoming episodes in that format? In that format.
And those will also, I believe, go onto Instagram as well. And so actually for the one for this episode, both of them have over 150 views, the shorts. And our short that went out highlighting some of the interview that we did with Kevin McGew back in December has over 1,200 views, actually.
No kidding.
Which is, so pretty incredible. And so really, really appreciate the attention to those, the shorts. And it looks like, too, that the YouTube videos are starting to kick up in watches. So we're getting people who are actually viewing both the video podcasts and the audio YouTube so Don Holly's episode, for example, just the audio version has 20 watches on YouTube, and his video version has 41. So,
well, that must have impressed the hell out of the Shirk Connection Committee.
Yes, listener, we're coming to you. The last piece of news to share is that once again we did not get Shirk Connection. And Gabe, do you want to share the listeners the feedback that we got on this one?
We have not gotten any feedback.
That's right, listener. No feedback once again.
So, Ken, a friend of mine suggested we might consider some kind of knowledge mobilization grant. Is there such a thing?
Oh yeah, I've seen those. Yeah, I mean that's a possibility. Where there's some internal money maybe at University of Lethbridge as well, and
or if you're a philanthropist listening in.
If you're a philanthropist listening in, if you're a brewery or a spirit provider, we're happy to hawk your wares if you want to. We're not in it to make money. We're in it to ensure that Emanuel and Cody remain on the staff of the New Brunswick Archaeology podcast.
Yeah, because, well, we're only in it to make money in the sense that time is money. And it turned out the Clipchamp approach to this took much longer and sounded much worse.
Yeah. I don't think this podcast would be operating still if Clipchamp was the way that we had to edit everything.
Ken might be making some hard decisions between Clipchamp and tenure.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm not sure the dean would have been as impressed that I was spending all my time doing audio engineering rather than writing. So that is it for the mailbag.
All right. And Ken, if someone wanted to write into us, where would they write in?
They would write into newbrunswickarchaeology@gmail.com. That's New Brunswick Archaeology, all one word, archaeology spelled ARCHAEOLOGY, newbrunswickarchaeology@gmail.com. You can send us direct messages on both LinkedIn and on Instagram. At Instagram, we are at new_Brunswick_archaeology. And JM found us on LinkedIn, so you can also find us on LinkedIn, listener. And follow, like, and share all of the above.
That's right. And Ken, we've got a very special episode lined up for the listener today.
Yes, we do. And so as we mentioned, we're going to be speaking with Kelley Berliner. And I think it's probably time we just send it over to our conversation with Kelley.
I think so. Here's Kelley Berliner from the Archaeological Conservancy down in the United States. Today we're joined by Kelley Berliner, who is the Eastern Regional Director at the Archaeological Conservancy. Prior to joining the Archaeological Conservancy, she earned a BA in Anthropology from the University of Toronto and an MA in Historical Archaeology from William & Mary, and worked in Cultural Resource Management Archaeology and in museums. Many of our listeners may know Kelley from the Archaeological Conservancy's YouTube channel, from which we've, on the show, recommended videos about the Shara site in Maine and the Barton site in Maryland. We highly recommend this channel, and we'll put it in the show notes. She's joining us today to discuss the Archaeological Conservancy's mission to acquire and manage the U.S.'s most important archaeological sites. Thanks so much for joining us, Kelley.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Yeah, appreciate it.
We do too. And so as we said in the introduction, the goal of the Archaeological Conservancy is to acquire and manage the U.S.'s most important archaeological sites. How does it do this? How does it identify the sites? And then how does it go about trying to acquire them? It sounds like a mix of real estate and CRM. And I'm curious how this works.
Yeah, and also why? Yeah,
sure. Oh gosh, I'll try to abbreviate our long history because we've been around for 45 years, and so the why of it was back in the 60s and 70s. Looting on archaeological sites, in particular in the Southwest, was at an all-time high, right? A lot of bulldozers were out either on federal lands or even on private property to get particular artifacts for sale. One of these are these membrace bowls, these really beautiful bowls that are often found in burials, and so really, really problematic. And the Society for Historical Archaeology, Society for American Archaeology, was really working to get new legislation. So in 79, you see updates to the Archaeological Resources Protection Act, which was shepherded. One of the individuals was Mark Michael, who is our founder. And so there was a groundswell of like, yes, we're doing better preservation on archaeological sites, but of course, those only apply to sites on federal land or projects that are involved with federal monies. And so there was a thought at the time of, well, maybe we could pass legislation in the United States that would protect archaeological sites on private property. And a lot of people were like, that's an immediate no. People here love private property. Like they're never going to accept that kind of broad sweeping national legislation. And so our founders, Mark Michael, who was joined by Jay Last, who was the angel investor. He was one of the reputed founders of Silicon Valley. And so he brought a lot of funding and he brought a lot of interest in archaeology. He wasn't an archaeologist, but had collected some of these questionable items and realized ethically this was problematic. And then Stephen LeBlanc, an archaeologist in the Southwest, came together and said we could actually leverage the power of private property to protect archaeological sites. And so we do that much like a land trust where we purchase property or have it gifted to us through donation, or we do bargain sales to preserve it and maintain it in perpetuity for future research and access by descendant communities. So that's a very brief history of how we got our start. And you're absolutely right. It's a weird mix of skills. There's like some CRM, there's a lot of real estate. There's an academic component too, where we're researching sites. And I tell everybody that every day is different because we're doing this process all the way from finding which sites should be acquired, which ones do we consider the most important. Generally, these are sites that are eligible for the National Register, but aside from that, the criteria are very broad. They can be historic, they can be pre-contact, they can be anywhere across the country. And so we start from that point and start to funnel down to which sites can we afford, which ones have people who are interested in them, what can we actually acquire, and so on and so forth. So the idea is to create, it's sort of like a land bank of archaeological sites to make sure that these places will be there long into the future, because we know technology is tripping over itself and we're getting better all the time, right? Just think, 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago, we weren't doing ground penetrating radar. We didn't have magnetometer abilities, and already we're just revolutionizing the way we do archaeology. So the hope is we'll continue to get better, and we'll make sure that part of these sites are always available for that kind of research as our technology improves. So hopefully that covers a bit of what you guys were asking, but I can prattle on.
And so it's this private land ownership. So this is like for Canadian listeners, this is odd, right? Because at provincial levels, like provincial heritage legislation in Canada or territorial heritage legislation covers all sites, right? And so what you guys are taking taking care of is where the National Historic Preservation Act protects federal lands, and then there's state lands. It's this private land piece that doesn't actually get adequate protection in the United States because, and I think this is the case, is that in the United States, if there's a site on your property, you technically own that archaeological site, is essentially how it works. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And it's something we talk about a lot. One of the side things we do that we could talk about later is we do archaeological tours, and we do a tour of archaeology on Ontario and Quebec. And it's something I talk a lot about up there because for Americans coming on that trip, it's like totally crazy that the provincial governments have more control over these resources on private property. Because down here, it's just, if you have a site in your backyard, you can put a swimming pool in on top of that. And unless you're in a particular municipality, or some counties and individual states have additional protections, or you might have an unmarked burial law in the state you're living in. But in general, there are just no protections that exist for those sites. And most people wouldn't even know that they're there. And so it's a very different model that lacks a lot of those heritage protections that you see provincially in Canada, and which is unfortunate in a lot of ways. But that's why we were here, to try to fill that gap.
Yeah.
And so in addition to needing Jay Last's email address so Ken and I can shake him down for funding for this podcast, we were wondering, are there other archaeological conservancies, or are you all pretty much the only show in town?
I wish I could share Jay's info. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. We were really, really fortunate to have him because, again, some of our really early projects, one of our first Midwest projects was the Hopewell Mound site. And without his kind of bankrolling for these projects, which that one drained our account too, but eventually now it's, of course, a National Park Service property. We couldn't have done anything. So there's always that balance of like, we need archaeologists, but we also need people who have money, and those are not often the same thing. But
do you have do you still maintain connections with Silicon Valley in any way? I don't know if you're allowed to tip your hat at the private donors or anything, but I'm curious if there's that kind of if there is an interest in heritage and, in that sector still, because I think that's actually kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it's variable. We work with a lot of private foundations where we get individuals who are maybe doing private, they're not very public about what they're doing, but they are very passionate about heritage preservation and site preservation. And so there are little connections, but they're not necessarily as broad. And over time, too, we've just increased our base membership and donorship across the country, because our early days were in the Southwest, which was an area where archaeology is very visible, right? You have standing ruins, you have Pueblo sites. Here in the East, this is our youngest office. It's been around, 25 years or so, because everyone was like, oh, it's all developed, right? It looks like New Jersey. It looks like Manhattan. There's no archaeology out there. Of course, we know this isn't true. And so as we've spread across the country, we've gained a lot of interest from different sectors of individuals, not only in that tech sector, but also just, people who have done really well for themselves working in fields that are not archaeology, but have always had a passion for it. So, so it's variable. But we're very fortunate to have those people who have lifelong love of archaeology heritage, and so donate to us. And so,
totally, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Gabe, you had a question that I totally.
That's okay. And are you the only Archaeological Conservancy in the country?
Yes. As far as I know, so we're the only national organization. In recent years, there's been a bit of a shift, and this might be a little bit anecdotal based on my experience, but with movements like Land Back, the indigenous movement, to want sites and land, ancestral land returned to tribes, we see a lot of regional land trusts and other national land trust entities like the Conservation Fund, which facilitates preservation of lands, be more interested in cultural sites. And so they're not specifically looking at archaeological properties, but in some cases they're trying to put it in that broader category of natural preservation, cultural preservation. A lot of time that's where our grant funds come from, because there aren't very many monies out there just for cultural preservation. So there is a greater interest, which is fine. We need more players in the field. We're happy to have, it's not competition. We're like, yes, please, there are plenty of sites out there. But as far as I know, and in Canada, similar situation, there's no CAC, there's no Canadian Archaeological Conservancy, though it's something, we've worked with Ron Williamson, founder of ASI, and Ontario archaeologist in the past. And he was saying this would be a great thing to expand into Canada, which would look a little different. But certainly there are sites that could use protection up there, but it's generally handled by regional groups like the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, I think, is one. So again, it's groups that are more looking at land preservation, but they take archaeological sites into consideration for some of the preservation they're doing, which again is super great, but it just looks different. So we're the only national specific archaeology focused organization that I know of.
Yeah, I actually.
Oops, second.
I was going to say I actually worked with the TRCA when I worked for Parks Canada, because they had all of this conserved land that they had kind of built up along the Don River Valley and the Rouge River Valley, and all of the lands that they had acquired along the Rouge River Valley became part of a new national park a few years back, just on the east end of Toronto. So, there is kind of that same idea where you guys have acquired lands that then get incorporated into national parks and national historic sites. That same process is happening, but there's not this archaeological conservancy, and so you start to see some of these indigenous and protected conserved areas are also another way that indigenous communities in Canada are approaching that. So, it's great that there are other entities doing it. I mean, even down here we have groups like the Native Land Conservancy, which is a native-run land trust that is doing some ecological sites, but some archaeological sites. And so more players coming into the field. What becomes challenging, and I'm happy to field calls from land trusts. A lot of them are just like, how do we do it, right? They don't have credentials to have access to archaeological site information.
Archaeological site management looks very different from ecological site management. So it's like, every now and then I won't name names, but, I'll go out to a protected area by a different land trust where I know there's an archaeological site and they'll be planting trees all over it, right? And so for archaeological site preservation, this is a really bad thing, right? The roots are going to disturb deposits, but if you're looking at restoring a forested landscape, it's a great thing. And so we're always happy to give advice and say, like, here's a better way to do that. But they lack, generally, they don't have cultural specialists on staff or archaeologists on staff, which is understandable. It's not like many of these groups have massive budgets. They're doing what they can with the resources they have.
That's great. And so in addition to supporting those sorts of initiatives like at other kinds of conservancies, how does the Conservancy manager support research on the sites that it owns? I know there's active research, for instance, at Barton, that the listeners heard about, and these sorts of things. And so how does that work?
So, it's interesting. So when we acquire a site, we don't solicit research. We try to be as neutral as we can. We're not trying to play favorites and reach out and say, hey, come on out to the site. And we don't pay researchers to do any work on their sites. We just want to make them available. And we then have a very, I don't want to say it's overly rigorous, but we have a review process for anybody who wants to do research on these sites. And so sometimes it's the case that we acquire a site and we have a researcher contacting us within a week or two, right? Wow. Because they know we've been working on it or they want to continue working there. Other sites we've had sit for 45 years where nobody's doing research either because there's a lack of interest, a lack of funding, whatever the reason may be. And that's okay. Like, we're not in a hurry.
Poison
idea.
ivy.
What's that?
Poison ivy.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. Subpar access and poor conditions, any number of things. And we're totally fine with that. We're happy for these places to just wait until the time is right. But for sites where we do have interest, we have researchers follow our research management guidelines. They submit a proposal. This looks very different for non-invasive work. So if somebody just wants to do GPR, something that's not doing ground disturbance, we can get you approved super quick. It's, you're sending a letter to the appropriate director, we're reviewing it, making sure you know what you're doing, and then you can go out there. For invasive work, for ground disturbance, we put together a review committee just to have regional archaeologists, specialists, other stakeholders check off on the work to make sure you have a good research question. You're not just coming out here because you want to dig for the sake of digging, and that you are credentialed and able to commit to getting a report done, right? This is always a big challenge in archaeology, is chasing researchers around for reports. And then we can approve that work. And so it sometimes sounds daunting, but once we begin working with the researcher, we've had multi-year projects. We've had field schools, in particular in the East. We've worked with the Indiana University of Pennsylvania on pre-contact Monongahela sites in the western part of the state as a multi-year program. So we're not only interested in supporting research, but supporting training of students and future archaeologists as well. And so we want to make sure that these resources are available. Beyond that, we try to make accessing the site, we make sure researchers can get in. We work with our site stewards. If we have someone who is farming the land or keeping an eye on it for us, we try to set everything up so it's accessible, easy, it's mowed to get in there. And then we try to bring connections for researchers as well. If we know volunteers who are interested or funding entities that might want to support that type of research, we're happy to facilitate those connections. And in general, we find we get a lot of benefit from these projects too. Like the work out at Barton brings a lot of awareness to our ownership of that site and our preservation of it. And so as a side benefit, then hopefully we get more members supporting the Conservancy as well as being interested in that research.
It's great. So you're a land manager, you're a real estate kind of purchasing entity, you're kind of a regulatory body, all of these other things. So there's not really kind of a typical day in your line of work, but what sort of things might you do in a typical week? It sounds like any number of different things, including giving site tours. And how did you get into this particular line of work? And I guess maybe how your colleagues kind of landed where they are.
Yeah, great question. I'll try to hit all those points. You're totally right. Every day is really, really different. I would say our main focus, so my priority number one is dealing with acquisitions. And that could look any number of ways. I mean, we have acquisitions where we're meeting with property owners and doing archaeological testing ourselves, right? Going out and putting shovel tests in to confirm, is there a site present? Is there something worth acquiring? All the way to working with state historic preservation officers, tribal historic preservation officers on regulatory projects where sometimes we can get donations through the Section 106 process, where developers choose to preserve a site in place. Maybe they don't want to own it, or maybe they want a tax benefit from donating that to us. And so that's something.
Sorry to interrupt. Is that off-site mitigation? Is that what that's called?
Or
banking mitigation or something?
Yeah, it can be. It depends on the project. So we've had some where it is like land banking, where a developer will acquire a parcel outside of the proposed development area and then donate it to offset whatever they'll be mitigating and disturbing and destroying essentially in the developed area. Other times they might have to preserve part of the planned development area, or they choose to, because a full-scale mitigation would be too expensive. Right. So we try to come in and say, hey, if you give us those 5 acres, we'll give you a great tax benefit. You don't have to maintain it. Everybody gets a little bit of what they want.
And this is why we know that one Paleo Indian site equals 3 Kaiser villages. This is right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I get this question from my students all the time, because I teach this in like cultural resource management, and it's not really something that's used a whole lot in Canada as a mitigation exercise, right? And so there aren't really great kind of case studies in Canada that you can draw from for those sorts of like mitigative practices, basically.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm happy to share details of them. I wish we had more of them, or more regular. It's a bit of a dance, right? So like we work with a lot of state offices, and the state office, the SHPO, can't require a developer to donate. They can't require that they work with the Conservancy. All they can do is make a recommendation. And so It can be really hit or miss on whether a developer wants to deal with us, right? They might just be like, oh, just leave it in green space. The HOA will own it, which then we find really frustrating, because most HOAs, there's a lot of turnover. They don't know there's an archaeological site there. So they might not be managing that green space effectively, or allowing research, or they're putting the dog park right on, a village site with burials. And it's not their fault. They don't know. But there are those gaps that we try to get our foot in the door to say, hey, this would actually be better all around for everyone. So the challenges of that, of course, are, again, it's not necessarily a requirement. And you get SHPOs that have high turnover. They have, not enough staff. And again, it's just all they can do is recommend. And so we've been really successful across the country in particular states. Other states are harder. But anyway, so that could be one day of the week, is like attending some of those meetings, working with stakeholder partners. A lot of times you have tribal partners at the tables as well, depending on the type of site and the type of review. And then let's see. So acquisition being the big one. So that's a lot of property that's getting surveys, that's getting appraisals, that's negotiating purchase. So that's really a lot of the real estate. The second big thing is terribly unsexy, but terribly important, and that's site management, right? So once we get these properties, we have to maintain them. Here in the East, which is Maine down through North Carolina, we've got just about 90 properties now. So that's a lot of grass to mow. That's a lot of fencing to keep track of. And so management is hard, because you never know. It's like I come in one week and I get a phone call that a large bull has broken through our fence because it escaped the adjacent fairgrounds during the shit. So you're like, oh, okay, let me get on the phone and call the fence company. Let's call our site steward.
And you're the only person running that whole area, right?
Currently, yeah. We usually try to have at least 2 people in the office at any given time. And so I'm due to hire an assistant. But yeah, for now, it's just me.
90 sites.
Yes.
Across
okay. Wow.
The entire
across the entire East. But I will say, and I've mentioned site stewards a couple times. So this is sort of our saving grace is we have a national site steward program. And these are people who maybe formerly owned the property. It might be a local archaeologist, someone who does no-till farming on the land. They lease it, someone who leases it for hunting. And so those are my eyes and ears out on the ground, right?
Oh,
They're
awesome.
the ones that can call me up and say, hey, like, there's a weird truck out here. Do you know if somebody's supposed to be visiting the property today? Because I cannot be in all these places at once.
Yeah.
So shout out to those amazing site stewards that we have.
And that has to be a wonderful way for, I'm guessing the site stewards are really passionate about archaeology, even if it's not their day job. And I imagine it's a really rewarding way for them to be engaged with archaeology.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
was
would
gonna
say,
how do you get to be a steward? That if you're not the landowner, that sounds like a great if I'm retired, I would love to do that.
we have a lot of great retired site stewards. It depends, right? So some people approach us to be site stewards because they are really, really keen on archaeology and they want to do something and they want to volunteer. The biggest determining factor is, do they happen to live near a property we own, right? And so sometimes they'll be like, oh, I'm in this city. And I'm like, oh, that's hours away from anything we own, which maybe isn't the best fit. But in other cases, especially working with local archaeological societies, we do get a lot of individuals who say, yeah, I live in the area. I drive by the site on a daily basis. I can just keep an eye on it. And they're wonderful because then maybe they can be on site when fence repairs need to be done, or they can just step in as needed. In other cases, people have very different interests. So people who are farming, people who are hunting. I would say most folks have at least a passing interest in archaeology, right? There's a curiosity of like, why is this protected? What's out here? And it helps to build a sense of some kind of ownership, right? When people know what's out there and what's so important. So maybe at first they thought, oh, this is just a great parcel of land to lease for hunting. But over time, they start to feel like, no, I'm a protector of this and I'm out here to make sure I've got signs posted up and I'm keeping people off who shouldn't be there. And so it is wonderful. It is a great volunteer opportunity. I always just warn, it depends on where you are, whether we have something available. But yeah, tremendously helpful for handling maintenance on properties. Those are wonderful folks. Like if we need to put in a fence and we have to do shovel tests in advance of having posts put in the ground, we can work with site stewards or local archaeological societies as well to just get some more person power and support. And so, yeah, management, it can go any number of directions. Sometimes it's just cutting grass and weed eating. We have a few sites that have public access. There's one close to me here where I have to like go weed eat the park every so often to keep the trail open. And then beyond that, yeah, we're doing site research here in the Eastern office. I've got over 1,000 files for potential acquisitions that I can thumb through when I have free time, which isn't often, but just to see, has something changed? Has ownership changed? Has attitude changed? And beyond that, if we want to get into particular research projects, like, hey, maybe we should really consider more paleo sites. Let me pull all the literature and start contacting those people who know about these sites. And then education would be the other thing that we fit in. We do a lot of lectures. Our YouTube channel really took off during COVID and the pandemic, which has been a really great thing to make some of these sites more accessible to the public since they're not all open for visiting. And then we plan archaeological tours. So yes, every day is super, super different. And I kind of love it for that. And my trajectory to get here, it's the type of job I didn't really know existed very well. I grew up in a more agricultural area that rapidly got developed as I grew older. And so land preservation was always something that was close to me. I'm an outdoor person. I love hiking and camping and all that kind of stuff. And when I went to school, I'll admit I was more of a history person. I was really interested in Indigenous history, and it was an intro to archaeology class at the University of Toronto that was taught by Michael Chazen, who's a professor there. Yeah, so he does a lot of his work in like Wonderwork Cave, like he's overseas, but like, I don't know, there was something about his passion for archaeology like he would just be so moved talking about it in front of this huge auditorium that I was like, oh, I need to do what this guy does, right? Like I want to be outside. It has a history component. It really just hits everything. So that pushed me into...
obsessed with the Trenton Gravels despite this other...
right. And so that landed me in archaeology. I worked in CRM. I went back to graduate school and found what I really was interested in was collaborative and public archaeologies of how do we communicate the importance of this work? How do we involve descendant communities or stakeholders? And so that kind of resulted in me doing a lot of public-facing work. Like I worked at the Redpath Museum at McGill University, and in a couple of those other spaces of doing outreach. But coming back here, I was looking for new opportunities that would have a little more archaeology than museum work at the time. And it just seemed to be like, oh, great. It's not like you'll be stuck working in an academic track, which can be really, really difficult to find jobs, or stuck in the CRM world. Instead, I get to dip my toes in a lot of different places. And sometimes I joke and call it like forced public archaeology, which doesn't sound great. but a lot of times we're calling property owners that may not know they have an archaeological site on their land. And so it's a challenge to explain, one, that they do and what that means and why it's really important and why they should work with us. And that's just one component, right? Then we do get to do outreach with interested communities and other stakeholders and collaborative projects too. So it's kind of just worked out well where I'm like, oh, great. I like that every day is different. I get to be outside a lot. I get to do a little bit of archaeology here and there. And then I get to do some research and office time. And there are hard days. It's not perfect like any job. But overall, it kind of ticks a lot of boxes for me. So, and same with, I don't want to neglect my other colleagues. I'm so sorry. Many of them come from archaeological backgrounds, either working CRM, or working in an academic setting, and then finding the same kind of perfect combination of different skills and different interests. And we do have some people who come from real estate as well. They come from the real estate preservation background, and then they learn the archaeology on the job, whereas many of us learn the real estate on the job. So that's, I would say in general, the background of most of the folks who are coming into the Conservancy.
Yeah. Cool. It's probably fairly rewarding though. Like, I mean, I'm sure some of these cold calls to landowners can be unique and challenging by times, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, I mean, this is, you kind of found it fits within this sort of interesting, broader cultural resource management, not like CRM digging test pits kind of thing, but in a resource management context, it's really unique in that way. And you guys get to kind of celebrate archaeology in a really interesting way.
Yeah, the wins feel really good to get some of these sites, especially, well-known sites like, we talked about the Sharrow site or the Barton site, or Flint Mine Hill is another big site in New York. It feels great to have those successes. It's hard to have the failures too, where, there are sites we go after and we miss them because of cost or just because, developers are really committed to doing full scale mitigation. And so it's part of the job is to like not take it personally, right? And be like, we can't save everything. We do the best we can.
To help the guests feel better, we encourage them to do things like name their least favorite states to work with, or maybe some developers they particularly don't like. So if you'd like to...
Hold on a second. Let me get my least favorite developer file.
Get your box of rotten tomatoes out and you can start launching them at people.
Yeah. Here's all the landowners who have yelled at me, either in person or on the phone. I will... I mean, I'll say too, like, it's really fun when we do... So we have 5 offices across the country, so we're a bit scattered and far afield, but we generally come back to have board meetings twice a year, either in Albuquerque, which is our headquarters, or around. And another really rewarding or fascinating part of the job is like we just meet a lot of really interesting people. Weird would be another word, just.
And that's an archaeologist speaking.
Yeah. Well, and I try to think, I'm like, is it that we meet? The first thought was like, oh, is it just that weird people happen to own archaeological sites? And then it's like, oh no, it's people who are kind of strange are more likely to return our phone calls, I think, is what happens. So, you can be standing on a site with a property owner and like, there was a gentleman I met in North Carolina who had like a whole schematic about how like the US Army secretly had an underwater military base under the river, and they contacted aliens that way. And you're just like, all right, well, we're just going to hear this story.
That seems like a terrible way to contact aliens.
I had a lot of questions for him that I don't know if I got satisfactory answers. But, again, we're also there at their invitation to view the site. And so a lot of times we just very patiently work through these stories. And when I'm out in Albuquerque, I ask some of our front desk admin staff to like get out the weird mail pile of what we get just for funsies, because people have a lot of interesting thoughts about archaeology and origins of the human species or aliens or mounds or rock piles. I'm sure you guys have gotten many similar calls or
definitely a few.
It seems like a pan-archaeology thing.
Yeah, the Eye of Ra appears in a lot of rocks, it seems like. That's in North America. That seems to be a common theme. So can the public take a YouTube tour of this alien this Army alien connection base?
It's highly secret, guys.
It's highly secret. Okay, so that one's not on the YouTube website.
So but if you can't do that kind of tour, tell us about this archaeological tour program. I actually admit I didn't realize this until you mentioned it.
Yeah. So I'll say we have sort of two categories. We have the YouTube tours, which you guys have mentioned a bit, which again, we got started when we couldn't actually go do in-person site tours because everything was shut down from the pandemic. And it was really good for bringing us into a more modern era, because prior to that, like our website and everything was still like in 90s mode. So it was great to be like, okay, actually we can do a much broader outreach. We can do virtual lectures and we can take people to sites that we normally can't take them to. So that I really push anyone who's listening and interested, or members of the public, whoever, go check us out on YouTube. You can actually see what our day-to-days look like, as well as some really amazing sites and some great lecturers. The in-person tours were something that was started decades ago in an effort to offer people a tour opportunity that really focused on archaeology and behind the scenes. So there are a lot of tours for North America and Central and South America, but they might only look at historical or sites, from the surface, not really getting into the archaeology behind them. And so the thought was we could run this tour program, which would take around 30 people, put them on a bus, and we could work with our contacts in the archaeological world to really raise awareness of the work that those partners are doing and the importance of protecting archaeological places. So we run it. These are paid tours. I would say generally we're attracting usually a base of retirees, people who have time and money to spend on these types of trips. And the thought initially was like, oh yes, well, like these will be great fundraisers. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're more of a break-even venture. But again, we're trying to get people who are members who keep coming back to support our work and appreciate the importance of these places. So we run them North, Central, and South America. We have tours to Peru. We have tours in Mexico. We have tours across our regions. So a sampling of tours that I do include archaeology of the colonial Chesapeake. So we're in Maryland and Virginia, looking at the Chesapeake region and pre-contact as well as early colonial settlement. The French and Indian War Tour, which is like a bonanza of forts across upstate New York and down into Pennsylvania and Maryland. We had an Iroquois tour looking at Haudenosaunee Six Nations sites across upstate New York, Archaeology of Ontario and Quebec, which is one that I helped put together, just having lived up there and being like, oh, there's such good sites. But it's a bit of a mishmash because I didn't want to exclude anything. So the theme is just like archaeology. So we do Haudenosaunee sites. We do like Jesuit missionary sites. We do teaching rocks up outside of Peterborough, the petroglyphs, and then Quebec City. And so anyway, it's a little bit of everything. And then I have also helped run tours in Guatemala and Oaxaca, looking at Maya sites and Zapotec sites. And to be clear, I'm not an expert on all of these regions. We often bring an individual or meet an individual who is an archaeologist that actively works in those areas. So that's a big thing we offer is we have somebody who's with us all week that is actively working on these sites. And then I become like a logistics coordinator for lunches and hotels. It's a weird thing that we do. It's a total pivot, but it's nice to get people out to the places that we think are really important and showcase the work that our colleagues are doing. I've gotten many requests for maritime Canadian tours. I do a New England tour. That's the other one. But a lot of those people are like, when can we do one of like Newfoundland or Nova Scotia? And I'm like, we could do it. I just need to make it first. So I'll let you guys know.
You heard it here first, folks. That's, brought to you by the New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast.
That's right. Yeah. We'll speak to our contacts in the cruise ship industry as well. That seems like a good way to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, let us know. Yeah, because we're always looking for interesting sites. And for me, it's been fun to get people, a lot of times when I run that Ontario tour, people are just like, I had no idea archaeology was up here. And it's like, well, it's everywhere. And there's some really wonderful sites across the province and in other provinces too. That's just most familiar to me. So that's where I started.
Cool.
Very cool.
Please keep us posted on that.
Yeah.
Can you share a particularly rewarding project you've worked on? I mean, in addition to the one about the canals, speaking to aliens, like what's your second favorite project?
Establishing contact with extraterrestrials has really been...
It's a big act to follow.
Yeah. I will... Oh, gosh. I don't want to show favoritism to New York, but we've had a couple really rewarding projects there. And so...
I knew it wouldn't be Ohio. I just had
and that's not even that's Midwest. I don't know.
I've never been to Ohio, but I feel like Gabe gives it a really bad rap. That's I could see it from Toronto. I
will say I helped last year. We do an Ohio mound builders tour, and they needed an extra person to come help. And I was like, for being an archaeologist that doesn't live that far from Ohio, I had never been out to those sites, like Great Serpent Mound and so on. So I was like, yeah, that's great. I'll have to do some work, but I'll get kind of a free trip out of it, right, in a way, or a paid trip. The sites are amazing out there. So really cool. It's like a rare redeeming quality of Ohio. But anyway.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
I'm gonna go to Ohio. I'm gonna take all the pictures of my favorite things in Ohio so that our listeners don't. We've got a listener that has written in a couple times. I can't remember her name here. I'm gonna have to look it up. But
she's in Marietta though, which is beautiful. It's a rare exception. It's got everything you could possibly want. It's a cute little college town, and it's got a mound.
Well, my wife's uncle lives in Cleveland and loves it there. So
I think there are plenty of good things. I mean, I work in West Virginia, which that's where my family's originally from, and I think it's a spectacular state. But I
love West Virginia.
Yeah, it often gets to be like the butt end of a lot of jokes, and I'm like, I don't know, it's pretty nice out there. There's some really amazing sites and a lot of work that could be done archaeologically wise. But anyway, so I'll give Ohio credit where it's due. I don't know it well enough, I think, to judge it too harsh. But
no, I'm glad you towed the party line here, which is that on this program, West Virginia is great and Ohio is not.
I know. Next thing I know, I'll be getting a call from our Midwest director being like, "What's the big idea?" We have so many sites that we've protected in Ohio. That's where our office used to be. And then I'll get a lot of angry Ohioans, and I'll be like, "It's don't take it personally." I mean, I also we don't have great luck in New Jersey out here in the East, so I always prattle about New Jersey, but I would say
we're trying to get connections with people in New Brunswick, New Jersey, so that we can do a New Brunswick archaeology podcast in New Brunswick, New Jersey. So if we make some connections, we'll let you know if there's any Conservancy potentials there.
Yeah, please do. We've looked at a lot of really good sites in New Jersey. There's some really good paleo sites, but I will say, to New Jersey's credit, they actually have a really good greenways program. And so they'll come in and scoop up these properties that we're really working on, which is good because the goal is preservation. It doesn't have to be us, but it's sort of dang, all that work and then somebody else gets it. But it's fine. As long as they're protected, that's totally cool.
So what are some of the goals for the Conservancy?
We're talking about her favorite project.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay, sorry, yes.
Which I'm sure was equally rewarding.
We left off in New York. Yeah, we were in New York.
Yeah, I'll do I'm going to just share two quickly in New York. One is a really great example of working through that mitigation process. So there's a site in New York called Flint Mine Hill. This is a large site just outside of Coxsackie, close to the Hudson River, where indigenous peoples were coming to get flint, to get chert for thousands of years. Anybody who's worked in New York or the region likely has heard of it. It's literally a hill that is flint. It's a giant quarry operation. And the site itself was researched. William Ritchie was out there years ago. It received additional research, I think in the 90s, again, looking at sourcing materials and how Native peoples were going about these quarrying operations. And there is a very large solar project that has been proposed for the surrounding areas. And so the site itself had actually been owned by a chapter of the New York State Archaeological Association through a strange, and it was the Long Island chapter, which is not close. So it was like one of those weird, the land should be protected. They somehow got involved. They had a connection, and they were protecting it. But again, they couldn't steward it from that distance, and it wasn't necessarily their main mission. They have a museum on Long Island that should, needs more of their attention and funding. And so, of course, what was hard was they didn't want to give the site away. They wanted some funding for it. From our perspective, the site was somewhat protected, so we didn't necessarily want to put a large chunk of money towards it. And then this solar development offered the way to make it all work. So as that was going through multiple review processes in the state, a creative mitigation is what some people will say, or this land banking mitigation was suggested by state officials of, well, if you acquire that property and give it to a preservation organization, that will help offset all of the sites that you will be destroying by putting in these solar fields. And of course, they still had to do archaeology on those sites. It's not like a free pass to just bulldoze everything. But that worked incredibly well. That's how we acquired the property. So they purchased it from the chapter of the Archaeological Association, which gave them the funds they needed to continue their operations. And then they donated it to us. So we were able to get that without a huge cost. Cool. And it's a really popular site. So we're hoping to actually get a tour up. I think I have one video up right now of me doing a management check out there. So that was a big win. And then the other one I'll briefly share is a little site called Jack's Reef that you've maybe heard of, if you've ever handled
distinctly shaped points.
If you've ever dealt with Jack's Reef projectile points and corner notch and all that kind of stuff.
Seen a man with pockets full of them actually at a conference one time.
Those points, like they get around, or that was just such a popular type. And it was not a site on our radar, not for any particularly good reason, because it's such a well-known site, given that it is the type site not only for different types of projectile points, but also different types of pottery. And it's a huge site, or a site where there's a huge focus on fishing. There's a lot of fishing hooks, and so from archaic and then into woodland periods. And we just hadn't considered it because nobody had done any work out there since the 50s. So there's a lot of sites like this, right, across the country that during the heyday of like early archaeological research, people were out doing a lot of testing. There were big river surveys, and then that tapered off a little bit for various reasons. And so it was a site we just hadn't looked at. And I got a phone call from a young man who lived across the street and his buddy who lived down the street who had walked those fields before. They had walked some of the fields along this bend in the river, and they had seen that the land was sold for development. And they were just like, we don't know what to do. We know there's a lot of really important stuff out there. One of the gentlemen is of Mohawk ancestry, and the other one is a teacher. And so they're just like, we're really passionate about seeing these places protected. And so it was just a cold call. They were like, maybe you guys can help. And so it's one of those acquisitions that speaks to like, it's great to have awareness, people knowing that these places are there and caring. And we were able to negotiate a purchase of 10 acres from the people who were developing it, to save the core of the site, which again, it's like everybody knows the Jack's Reef site by name. If you're working the archaeological sector, especially in the Northeast, you've heard that name go around. But to get back to the original source of that information and be like, now it's protected, now somebody can go out there in 10, 20, 50 years and do even better research than was done back in the 1950s, was really, really rewarding. And those two guys are now our site stewards.
Oh, I was just going to ask, are they still involved with the project? That's great. That's really cool.
Yeah. So they let me know like what's going on. Is the development going in? Is it stalled? What's happening? And a lot of times it speaks to like we are generally willing to work with anybody. So, just because somebody was an amateur archaeologist or a collector doesn't mean we're not willing to consider working with them, especially when they're in the right place with like, this actually should be protected and they understand that like, they can't go out there and just freely dig holes and everything. So we have a lot of great stories like that too. So not to show a ton of favoritism to New York, but just a good example of the types of projects that we can encounter.
No, that's great. Those are fantastic stories. I really feel good stories about on both of those cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some of the goals for the Conservancy moving forward? Like, I'm presumably continue to do acquisitions, and you said you have a stack of about 1,000 sites that you're kind of playing with right now. So that's the main goal, is like continue the preservation work we've been doing for 45 years. There's always more to do, and each office kind of has their top sites, right? Like if we could get the money or we could get a property owner to agree to work with us, those would be the ones to get. And those are just sites we cycle through. So we make relationships with people, with landowners, and then we might not hear from them for 20 years. And then you'll just get a call out of the blue where they're like, hey, I am now ready to sell this to you. Because land is touchy. Cool. Private property is really touchy for people. So we're always waiting and hoping for those types of calls, but also trying to add new sites to look at, right? Especially nowadays, it's generally CRM is finding a lot of new sites. And so that's something that I've tried to work on, is being closer with the American Cultural Resources Association, ACRA, with cultural resource management firms, because they're juggling a lot already, right? It's that interesting sector of archaeology, but that's where most archaeologists work. And so to try to make us more visible in that industry, so they think about us as well, right? Like maybe they're doing a phase 1 and 2 mitigation, but the developer decides they don't want to pay for phase 3. Well, that would be a great time to say, hey, maybe you want to work with the Archaeological Conservancy. And we've had some CRM firms work with us on a couple of acquisitions like that. So that's something that I think we could strive to do more of as we move forward, is interfacing with CRM firms more regularly and more effectively. And we always have a goal of trying to acquire, I don't want to say like underserved categories of sites, but part of our mission is to have a representative sampling of archaeological sites. And so every so many years we come together and look at, well, what do we have in the East? How many of these sites are single component archaic? How many of them are historical, industrial? And where are we really lacking? So the challenge is we can set that goal, but there are so many other factors, right? Like I can list off a dozen paleo sites we'd really, really like to get to fill that gap. But if the property owner just doesn't want to work with us, then too bad. Right. So we try not to hone in too much on being like, oh, we have to get these. But we have goals like that. And, I'll say I'm often surprised. We acquired a site that is a historical Jewish community settlement site in Connecticut dating to the mid-1900s, which is just a totally different type of, or late 1800s, excuse me, up through mid-1900s, which is a totally different type of site, right, than we're often looking at, but is representative of an immigrant community. Very interestingly, these people were practicing a lot of their traditions, like having a ritual bath, a mikveh, and these other components. And so we try to keep really open minds as we move forward of, like these are also really important parts of the history broadly of this land and the people who are here. So we should also be considering those sites. So I would say those are our big goals, and then continue, the outreach efforts that we do, try to get more people interested. We publish a magazine called American Archaeology. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but that's really our big driver on recruiting members and doing outreach for the general public.
Can we ask, if it's not too inside baseball, what are the big gaps in the Conservancy's holdings?
I'll mostly speak here for the East.
Sorry. Yeah.
Since that's what I know best. Single component sites are hard to come by, right? So especially like single component archaic sites are something that are really difficult. We have some really, really wonderful ones. Sharo not necessarily being a single component, but largely archaic up in Maine is great. We also have the Dresden site in Maine, which is a major archaic site.
Cool.
But beyond there, as we get farther south, down into the mid-Atlantic and into Maryland and Virginia, I would say we have a bit of a gap in the archaic period. We have a lot of woodland into contact period sites, and part of that has to do with the sites that got more heavily researched, so we just have better documentation on them. And as you guys know, those later sites, people are more sedentary, there's more stuff, right? So those we have much better coverage. We've done surprisingly well on paleo sites, I would say, considering they can be so ephemeral. But we have sites like the Conover site in Virginia, Thunderbird we now own.
Cool. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
so a lot of the greatest hits.
We're trying.
Yeah, really, eh? Yeah. It's funny. I mean, it's interesting, though, that it correlates like these single component archaic sites that are archaeologically ephemeral are, I guess it makes sense that, there's not as much stuff to sort of, the paleo sites, you've got eye-popping diagnostics that I think a lot of people, and, within a collector community too, I think you're probably a little bit more recognizable. But, I think a Stark Neville point is a little bit more inside baseball than a fluted point,
Right, and it's also a question of going back to my early CRM days and like early conference papers. I presented on like our archaic sites. Are we like finding but not recognizing them, right? Because so often there isn't a lot there, and so they're being like, oh, it's a lithic scatter, or it's a small, but like maybe there's more to these sites than we're really realizing. So there's also that whole component of it as well. But I'll say we have pretty good coverage in the sense that where you have these later sites, woodland period sites and so on, you often have an archaic component, so they are present. Moving forward in time, probably could use better coverage of contact period sites. We do have a number up throughout the Northeast here, but then also sites that are representative of other communities like African American sites, freed African sites. I've looked at several in Pennsylvania, these communities of people who are moving north. And importantly, not just focusing on sites of like enslaved Africans, which we do have a lot of plantation sites in the South. We have some here in the Mid-Atlantic region, but also where those people went as they moved north to, again, just have more diversity and representation of these different communities. Especially up in New England, right? There's a lot of Dutch sites. We have a lot of different immigrant communities coming in that many of them we've looked at. We just haven't had successful acquisition of all of them. And so my hope is to try to, as time permits, we're very fortunate that we have the freedom to get into these little pockets and do that type of research and say, the Eastern region is now going to do a big Dutch site focus, and try to acquire some of those properties and meet with the people who have done those research, that research outside of Almaty and so on and so forth. So
it's not just type sites.
Exactly. Yeah. Not just type sites. Yeah. So, I would say there's always a gap somewhere. Like New Hampshire is a big gap for us. It's hard for us to get sites in New Hampshire, but we're always trying.
Live free or die.
I know.
I was going to say, is this just too much living free?
I know. We do have the Nevers site, so another great paleo site in the northern part of the state. We worked with Dick Bover up there to acquire that. So,
well, the Neville site's just down the road from you, isn't it, Gabe?
Oh, this is the Nevers, the
Nevers
site.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I misheard that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I actually am currently about a mile from the Neville site, but the Neville site is under a bridge abutment.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so it's
I mean,
yeah,
it's probably not quite what you're looking for.
Sometimes these things happen. Like we'll get really I'll speak for myself. I'll get really stoked on a site. I'll be like, why haven't we looked at this site before? And I'll like start pulling together all the information. And then what's really fortunate now is nowadays there's much better parcel mapping online, right? So back in the day, like we would just be driving to county courthouses to do deed research and pull survey plats. And there are some counties where we still, like Virginia, there's a couple I still have to do that. But for many places now, you can pull up that online parcel information. And for many states, their state offices have site information online if you are properly credentialed. So I can pull up those sites and be like, oh, right, it's under a building or it's like under a bridge. And that kind of quashes that enthusiasm. But it has made it easier to cover a lot more ground as opposed to being physically on the road, since we do that quite a bit already. So
that's cool. And so, Kelley, I've learned an awful lot from this discussion about the Conservancy, and we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us about it. But before we let you go, if our listeners are interested in supporting the Archaeological Conservancy, even if they don't own a type site to give you, how can they do that?
I know that was my first thing. I was like, have a great archaeological site on your property that you would love to donate to us.
Exactly.
Preferably one that has had some research and is not just a rock pile, because I've got enough of those offered.
Yes.
Check us out.
Not just a small archaic lithic scatter either.
You just need strictly Eye of Ra sites in the New England in New Hampshire. That's it. Yeah,
ones that are part of like broader. Yeah, like I mean, there's a guy in Ohio that contacts us all the time. Sorry to go back to Ohio about like mountaintops being actual mounds, and like he's got a lot of maps and schematics. We're good on that. We don't need more of that.
Okay.
But check us out online, the Archaeological Conservancy. Please visit our YouTube. Like, those resources are there to do outreach and education. Especially some of the lectures are really, really wonderful. I enjoy them myself. We try to get people to come in from different regions and different specialties. So it's not just us talking at you guys. It's people who really work in some of these different sectors. And consider becoming a member. It's only $30 a year. You get 4 copies of American Archaeology, which I don't think I have one. I was about to like hold one up, but it's a wonderful magazine. It's written more so by science writers than by archaeologists to make sure it's interesting and captivating. They only let us write in the very
You're saying
back.
We're not good at that?
I mean, some of us we're getting better. And we do, in the back, we cover our acquisitions and any ongoing research projects we have and things like that. But the point of the magazine is to highlight research that's going on in North Central South America. And so I also will suggest to gentlemen like yourself, send us stories too. I'm always trying to get better Eastern coverage. I'm trying to get better Canadian coverage in there. So we're always looking for, ongoing excavations or research or new finds that are happening. And it's the best $30 you'll spend. I mean, it's a great magazine. And beyond that, if you want to be a site steward or have more interest, depending on where you live, consider contacting us, and we can let you know if you're close enough to a site or not, or what we could maybe use help for. But in general, we are a nonprofit, so we're always looking for help and money. And we're happy to take either of those from you all, but at least we try to give something back in return. We try to put this material out there and this magazine out there. So.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, we'll tell Tammy from Ohio to reach out to you, because maybe she has an excellent site that she knows of and can redeem Ohio after this all of the shade that it took today.
I know. I'm sorry. There are really, really great sites out there. I've been out to some of the sites we've protected out there, and they're absolutely wonderful. And I highly recommend our Ohio Mound Builders tour to anyone who needs a new filter for viewing Ohio. It will really change the way you see things there.
Gabe, I think she's speaking directly to you. That's
Ken, I will say I have never said that there aren't great mounds to go look at in Ohio. In fact, that's why I've driven through Ohio, was to go look at mounds.
Which is just as good a reason as any other. I mean,
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Well, Kelley, it's been
having you on.
It's been fantastic.
Yeah,
and
thank
really
you guys so much.
Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, and again, if people have questions or more interest, I'm easy to find online. Please feel free to reach out. It's really great to have a chance to just get our message out there like this. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks,
have a great day.
Great. Take care.
Well, Ken, I think it's time for hit pieces.
I think it is.
What have we got in the hopper today, Ken?
Well, so why don't we kick off with a little bit of self-congratulatory work here? That's
a delicate phrase.
So I believe we left off before the holidays. Our last hit piece actually featured a paper that came out with Lindsay Amundsen Meyer and Matt Monroe and I in Advances in Archaeological Practice. And so for the listener who's not familiar, there's a online magazine called The Conversation that specializes in, I think their tagline is something like scholarly content, public news or something. Here, let me pull it up. So we'll give them a academic rigor. Academic rigor, journalistic flair is the tagline for The Conversation. And what they do is they tend to favor publishing short pieces. They're about 700 to 900 words in general, where you distill a recently released academic paper and kind of get to the point about like what makes it relevant, right? Mm-hmm. And so much the same as like Science News will do for like a science article. The idea is to kind of get public-facing pieces of academic research out to the public in a more digestible format. And so we took the results of the survey work that we had done and brought in some more contemporary issues that have been in the news, and in particular, talking about the recent changes in like legislation and how more broadly in Canada and the US, but in focusing Canada specifically, how the labor shortage that we're pointing to in our data may be tying in with a broader narrative around economics and economic consequences resulting from not having enough archaeologists to do work for like what are becoming these things, like these projects of national importance, right? And so tying in archaeology and the demand for CRM archaeologists and some of the work that we've done to this conversation that's going on more broadly in Canada surrounding regulation, particularly environmental regulation, and how governments seem to be favoring an approach that is more deregulatory rather than increasing regulation.
It's the Kondo Marie method for regulation, would you say?
Yes. They've viewed all of these regulations and they found that none of them make them happy, and so they're just going to get rid of them.
None of them spark joy. And is the conversation open access?
It is, yeah. And what's cool too is it's Web of Science. So it's you get a DOI with your article, so it becomes this Web of Science tie-in. So that's for the academic audience, but for the listener, what it means is that within the academic world, you have a digital object identifier, I think it's called.
I've actually never thought about what that stood for.
And the Web of Science just basically means
for dead on inbox is what it's called.
Yeah. What it means is that it's indexed within a broader field. And so like actually one of the things I hadn't checked is to see, I'm guessing it shows up on my Google metrics.
Oh, excellent. Good.
And, but I haven't checked that. So I should do that. See if it,
you should
see if it's ticked up my H index or H score or whatever
Absolutely.
it is. Because I think it was at a negative before. So the title is, and I should have had this pulled up.
And it's findable at if the listener Googles the title we're about to give them and plus the conversation, it should come up.
Yeah, so Canada has too few professional archaeologists, and that has economic consequences. And we will provide a link to that in the show notes, as well as a link to the original open access article that we spoke about on a previous episode.
Yeah, excellent. Nice work, Ken. I think you might be the first person to go back to back on our hit pieces.
No, I think you had a back-to-back last spring, actually. You had like 3 or 4 papers come out in rapid succession. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we've both gone back to back. And our next one is a fellow podcast on something called Death et Sec, which of course is Latin for very dead, by Tanya D. Marsh, and it deals with the legal aspects, in particular, of death care in the United States, and in particular, like legal aspects surrounding.
Let me
death.
guess, it costs a lot.
I believe it's very expensive to die in the United States.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be subsidized soon.
Good. Yep.
And the reason though that we brought this up is episode number 30 of Death et Sec is with my old friend Dr. David Leslie, who runs a suite of CRM companies in Connecticut, really in New England. And what he's talking about are the legal applications of using GPR to identify graves in various contexts, but especially for like delineating cemeteries, parts of which may be unmarked.
Yeah, and Dave is a GPR expert and does information sessions and stuff like this all throughout the Northeast, doesn't he?
Yep, exactly. So the GPR wizard. He even does the SAA online ones, I believe.
Okay. Is he one of these guys that builds his own machines as well, or?
I think he buys machines at extraordinary expense from strange little countries that have built-in things. He's always telling me about his machine, and
so he customizes it with
I think it's
flair.
modded out. Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
I think it's the muscle car version of GPR. I think. He had at ESAF most recently one of my old graduate student Chris Brulette pulling one behind a four-wheeler.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, rapid, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's the nitro of the of the GPR world.
Yeah, but it is in fact an interesting podcast, and I think particularly for kind of the non-professional who, I mean, like, because this sort of thing actually comes up a lot, is my understanding, in like town planning issues. You know, like you find out like where is the edge of that cemetery actually.
Yeah, I get the sense that colleagues of ours, so Sarah Beanlands and Steve Garson, I think a lot of some of their bread and butter GPR work tends to be delineating historic cemeteries with like community groups, doesn't it?
That sounds right to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually a colleague here at the university, Craig Coburn, who's a remote sensing specialist, had recently finished up a project working with a small church group here in southern Alberta using remote sensing techniques, including GPR, I believe.
Oh, cool. Very
to
cool.
identify, and like he's more a specialist in like UAVs, so drones and like LiDAR and multispectral imaging.
Yeah.
But I feel like he used a GPR as well. But it was an interesting project because they did some like surface stuff on the ground, but also stuff up in the air to identify these grave plots.
To get him on to talk about it.
We should actually, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, Ken, I think that's our hit pieces for tonight. We've got a bunch of new episodes coming.
No, we got one more, Gabe.
Oh, do we?
Yeah, Upper Paleolithic.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Gabe's trying to get around this. He hates this topic, so this is.
And listener, that's our show for tonight.
I think this is so we've talked on the show a few times about pre-Clovis stuff, and in particular the site Cooper's Ferry, the site in Idaho that seems to be consistently dating to between about 15 and 16,000 years ago, has interesting tool technology, and we've talked a little bit about the connections between, or the lack of identifiable connections between, a lot of these pre-Clovis sites that date to somewhere between 13,500 years ago and about 16,000 or so years ago. I will admit that even in this article, they kind of stretch it out to about 20,000 years, and I don't know. I don't buy that. But so what this article, which is characterizing the American Upper Paleolithic by David B. Madsen, Lauren G. Davis, Thomas J. Williams, Masami Izuho, and Fumi Izuka in Science Advances is basically arguing that looking at the stone tool technology at a cluster of sites in kind of the gold standard pre-Clovis sites in North America, which include the Galton Friedkin sites in Texas.
Alleged pre-Clovis is the phrase we like to use in this program, Ken.
It's these ones are like that fit the bona fide pre-Clovis, where you have your identifiable human tool. Yeah. So Deborah Friedkin and the Galt site in Texas, the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in, I believe it's Pennsylvania, Cactus Hill site in Virginia, and Cooper's Ferry. And these all date fairly between about 14,000 and 16,000 years ago. They're all sites that have a subsequent Clovis component in them as well. And so they're stratigraphically below, they date to earlier than, and they are identifiably human manufacture, which, using the parlance, is a bona fide pre-Clovis site. And what the authors...
See, but Ken is actually shaving his beard, so he just has a mustache while he talks about this, and slipping into a cowboy hat.
Yeah. So the argument here is that the tool technology, which is comprised of core and blade, as well as a biface technology, is identifiably similar to a technological tradition in the late Upper Paleolithic of Northeast Asia, in particular the Paleo-Sakhalin Hokkaido Kuril region of Hokkaido Island and north in sort of just off the coast of Japan. And what they're arguing is that what it looks like is these tool technologies, although there's no clear genetic relationship or any identifiable genetic relationship between people who were at these pre-Clovis sites and people who were at these sites in Northeast Asia. Based on genetic evidence, we know that human ancestors in North America tie their ancestry to Northeast Asia, and there is an identifiable and fairly, relatively convincing looking tool technologies in Northeast Asia in this PSHK region with those pre-Clovis sites in North America. Yeah, and so what these authors argue here is that although it has been the appropriateness of using Upper Paleolithic terminology in North America has been argued as problematic. These authors are saying that there appear to be, at least from a technological perspective, clear linkages between these two different groups. And so this is sort of emerging research and just kind of another line of evidence in sort of piecing together where people came from, when they did it, and what they brought with them. And but I always like to tell my students a lot of this pre-Clovis stuff, and I think there's a lecture that you sent me that I share with my students as well from what's the guy's name? Probably. Yeah, Todd Suravel. I like David Meltzer's perspective on it, is that everybody has an ancestor, not every person has a descendant. And so what we see with a lot of this pre-Clovis stuff is that it is, without question, people in North America who were here earlier than we originally thought people were in North America. But whether or not they left descendants or any kind of descendant technology, those pieces they don't have clear connections. And so one of the things in this I thought was actually quite interesting is that they have a diagram showing sort of all these tool technologies, and they make a point of showing Clovis and Folsom sort of near the bottom without any clear predecessor technology, right? So still no clear fit between this earlier stuff and what Clovis is.
All right, and it is in fact an interesting article, and it's worth reading. And Ken, I'm being reminded we should do as a hit piece at a later date the new Galt video out on PBS, but we can save that for a later date.
Okay, you'll have to send me that. I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's heartwarming.
Oh, well, there you go. And Galt's a really fascinating site, listener. There's rock art and all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Ken, I think we've come to the end of another episode.
I think we have, and we've gone back in time to a sunnier November. I'm curious.
It's fall in the Mid-Atlantic, but it's winter here, listener.
Exactly. Yeah, and we'll talk to you soon, listener, and stay tuned for lots of exciting announcements in the next few weeks. We will be having a formal announcement of our live show at the CAAs, but I would say as of yesterday, we are all but confirmed for that happening, and so we'll have some more details as they emerge over the next few weeks.
That's right. Talk to you soon, listener.
Talk to you soon, listener.
The New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast is brought to you every fortnight by the Association of Professional Archaeologists of New Brunswick. Funding and support is provided by Social Sciences Humanities Research Council grant, University of New Brunswick and University of Lethbridge. Research by Gabe Reinick and Ken Holyoke. Production is handled by audio engineer Emanuel Akel. Video production by Cody Pye. Theme music is composed by Justin Hankey. Theme music remixed by Emanuel Akel. And Hakuna Rada by Shane Dell. Find us on Instagram at _New Brunswick _archaeology, on LinkedIn, and on the web at newbrunswickarchaeology.com.